Tell us about the banking sector and what's happening. A couple of the major banks are going to move significantly up on the Fortune 500 when it comes out in a couple weeks, but you think things are not so rosy. So tell us what you're seeing.
Well, it's amazing the performance of these stocks over the last year, right? So Citi was close to $1 a year, just a little over a year ago. It's over $4 now. There's been incredible resiliency in the stocks. In the underlying earnings of the banks, there has been less resiliency. So if you strip out the government involvement, and I don't mean just the government taking stakes in these entities. I mean what the government did to really prop up the earnings of these entities. So its participation in buying agency paper. We estimate put about $60 to $100 billion of capital in the back door of banks. So without that, the banks would be significantly less well capitalized. They also provided an environment where it was an incredibly rich trading environment around a lot of the fixed income securities, including government mortgage-backed securities. Risky asset prices rose dramatically because of a lot of the government's purchase programs. What the banks have not done, and they promised the government that they would do, is lend. So lending balances are down dramatically. So outside of the government's involvement, the core earnings of the banks looks just as bleak as it did before. One big difference has been also government involvement in terms of the home loan modification programs, which has blurred credit. So instead of having loans go delinquent and then ultimately go into foreclosure and get charged off, they're staying in the delinquency category for a much longer time. So banks' non-accruing portfolios has ballooned, but the actual foreclosures has been modest. And what that means is the bank's charge-offs have been less than people would have expected or what would have been normal for this time in the cycle. And the bank's earnings have looked that much better. But that's just a time game. So it's been, I said before we started, it's been a hard time to really understand what's going on inside of the banks and a hard time to be an analyst covering these banks. But I think throughout the remainder of the year, you're going to start to see much more clarity around what these banks can really earn.
What about Citi? I mean, there's been talk lately, look, this is a new Citi. They've sold off all these assets. They've shrunk the balance sheet. Is that, I mean, what's going to happen there in your opinion?
Well, they've shrunk the balance sheet. They still have more shrinking to do in terms of their stated goal. I think of running off $400 billion worth of loans on its balance sheet. Some businesses at Citi are doing okay. In terms of the global cash settlement business is doing okay. Some of the businesses are doing just as badly as everyone else. Citi's main problem, from my vantage point, goes back to a really old problem, which is its technology and its integration that never happened makes Citi a very expensive place to run a business. And so the businesses don't benefit from synergies the way they would at some of the bigger banks that took time to integrate. So you've got, a bunch of different businesses, one speaking Mandarin, one speaking English, it just it's not a very efficient business, and so ultimately I think that's going to be its biggest challenge. For the rest of the businesses, we're still looking to see what Citi can really earn.
What do you think about the job that Vikram Pandit has done?
I think he's done a perfectly commendable job. I mean, the problems at Citi are bigger than one person. He's done what he's said he would do, which is shrink Citi. So, focus on international business. I mean, it's a daunting challenge for anyone, for a lot of people at that company.